Hello, everyone. This is going to be a little bit weird because we're going to start this before we actually start this. So, for all you guys on certain social media spaces, we're starting right now. For those of you on Facebook, you don't know that we've started yet, and we're getting ready to start. So, you guys get to see how we get to start Facebook here, too, which is kind of cool. Anyway, we're going to get that going right now. And then we'll go live on Facebook and we'll do our intros and stuff. But you guys are getting the special stuff even pre-intro, which is kind of cool, right? So here we go. Good morning, everyone. If you're listening on Facebook, we're going live now. If you're listening on YouTube or other platforms, we went live just a second ago. But welcome to this episode of Chip Talks Podcast. Today we've got an exciting episode. So we're going to be talking about AI and AI in healthcare. And this is a vast topic. There's lots of innovations happening in AI right now. Many things going on, right? So if you're following this at all, or if you've played around with things like Chat GPT, it's amazing, really is, and we'll talk about this during the presentation. But how does this relate to healthcare, and how does this relate to you and how you work? That's some interesting discussion. So right now there are some things being done, and again we'll talk about a little bit more detail in the presentation. But there are some things being done in AI in healthcare, but they're kind of low-hanging fruit. They're easy things. No one's really tackled the big thing yet, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about, because we really need to tackle the big thing. And the big thing is going to take some work. It's going to take some trial and error. Like, it's not going to be right off the bat. But it might be mostly right off the bat. So anyway, let's talk about that, shall we? Let's dive right on in. So we're going to talk about AI technologies today. Woohoo! If you go out to NIH, and I always like to kind of start my little digs or research, or when I'm looking for information, I always like to start with NIH because there's obviously a ton of good research out there. Very reputable scientists have done it, and usually it's published in peer-reviewed journals. So I just sort of ask Google, tell me AI in healthcare. So there are some articles and stuff out there. But again, no one is really trying to algo you yet. They're trying to maybe algo aspects of you. They're trying to algo better, like, let's say, ways to evaluate instrumentation and better ways to do diagnostics. So that's happening a lot. But no one's tackled you yet. So we're going to talk about tackling you. This is a group out of Italy. So they are kind of they're pretty advanced in what they're doing in AI. So they are using thermal imaging technology to look at things like knees. And then from that thermal imaging technology, they've written AI software which will take that image and, let's say, indicate hot points or areas of concern or things that an athlete or a coach or something like that might want to be looking at that might be an area of weakness. So, like, for instance, they look at a lot of soccer players, professional soccer players, and they're looking for weakness in knees and things like that, because if they find it before an injury occurs, think of the value to that, not only to the player, because the player can rehabilitate that area before an injury occurs, but also to the value of the team, the value of the coach. It's just, it's a win-win-win. But AI is being used quite heavily by these fellows, so Thermo-Human, and again, they're a group out of Italy. There's some PhDs out of Italy. This is also where I received my thermal imaging training from, which was great. They're really good, and it was really applicable to anatomy and kind of how the human body worked, and they've got a lot of that done and figured out. But it was very good training that I went through. Okay, so how do you algorithm human function? All right, so where would you start? So if I gave you a challenge, and again, AI, for those of you guys that don't know, AI is not mystical and magical. It takes an algorithm, right? It takes a recipe. So it doesn't matter what you're looking at. It might be open the door, right? So you have to be able to algorithm open the door. So I extend my hand, I open my hand, I grip the knob, I turn the knob, I pull the knob, the door opens, right? So you have to be able to algorithm anything to be able to have AI, the underpinnings of AI, let's just say, is an algorithm, right? So if you're wanting AI to assess something, you human, have to be able to write that algorithm to be able to break down that thing into a simple set of rules that you give to the AI, and then the AI basically builds how it's going to run data through to accomplish the task, okay? But it takes an algorithm, right? So, when we look at human function, can you algorithm human function? Can you algorithm how you work? Well, if you're classically trained, if you're a doc out there listening to this, or a PhD out there listening to this, and you're classically trained, you're gonna be shaking your head. You're gonna be going, there is no way you can algo human function, because it's just too complicated and too vast, right? And so that's really the common thinking out there right now. Well, hopefully by the end of this, I might impact that thinking just a little bit. So some aspects of human function are pretty easy to tackle. Like thermohuman is done, looking at knees and, knees under inflammation and things like that. So, that's doable. But can we tackle you? Can we tackle you as to the disease? Like, for instance, and we'll talk about this at the end a little bit, but can we build a medbed type situation that would evaluate you, sort of suggest a treatment, and then evaluate you under that treatment? I mean, that would be cool, wouldn't it? And I think that's where we all want to go. So can we algo you? Well, we can, okay, we can, but we need really a better frame of reference right now. Like, what's your regulatory system? How do you regulate yourself? And, I know the answer to that. It's endocannabinoid system. That is, I would say, heavily anecdotally proved. And that has been proved through many, many studies. But there's not one aggregate study there that says that the endocannabinoid system is our master regulatory system. But it's pretty obvious, okay? So you've got to start there, right? So you've got to start with the endocannabinoid system. And so I decided to ask AI. I asked ChatGPT, what does the endocannabinoid system regulate? And again, these are all citable, let's say, claims about what the endocannabinoid system regulates. So, anybody out there in science land freaking out that we've, sort of putting this stuff out there. No, these are all citable claims. You can sort of go there yourself if you'd like to. I'll leave that to the reader or the viewer. But look at this, okay? So again, the nervous system, the ECS is widely distributed in the central nervous system, CNS, including the brain and spinal cord, as well as the peripheral nervous system. It influences neurotransmission and neuronal activity, playing a role in various neurological processes. It regulates the nervous system. The immune system, the ECS has immunomodulatory effects, meaning it can influence the activity of the immune system. It plays a role in regulating inflammation and immune response. Cannabinoid receptors are expressed on immune cells, and endocannabinoids help modulate immune function. It regulates the immune system. It regulates the endocrine system. It regulates the cardiovascular system. It regulates the gastrointestinal system. It regulates the reproductive system. It also regulates our energy status, right? So if we have a need for energy, and we're going to go into that in a second. So if we have a need for energy, well, how does that happen? It happens through a process called AMPK. So again, AMPK is a switch that reacts to your need for ATP, and that happens. ATP is our gas. Okay, so when you have a need for gas, you're going to basically mess with the AMPK switch. Your gas is built from interesting substrates. So it can be built from fat, or it can be built from sugar. It's way more efficient to have your gas built from fat than it is from sugar. But, again, that has to do with this AMPK switch. So AMPK switch is also known as the fasting and fed switch. So you, let's say, turn AMPK off, or you unphosphorate it when you eat, and it stays that way for 5 hours. 5 hours after you eat, it rephosphorates, and it will stay there until you eat again. That, when you're unphosphorated or off, that's called fed. When you're on or phosphorated, that's called fasting. Okay, so we'll talk about that more in a second. This switch controls, many regulatory, controls basically our entire metabolic function. Okay, so many regulatory functions. This switch is controlled by our behavior. Okay, so we control this switch with our eating behavior, and we control this switch with our eating frequency. So how do we turn it off? Eat. How do we turn it on? Go 5 hours without eating. So it's that easy. This switch heavily interacts with the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so let's algo some stuff, shall we? Let's say any hormone, okay? So let's say we hook Joe up, and through other methods, we evaluate that Joe has low testosterone. All right. So how are we going to look at that, and if we fed that, how would we build that algo, let's say? So how would we evaluate whether Joe has low testosterone? And there's ways to test for that. You can test for that in a lot of different ways. So check that box. And then how would we influence Joe to be able to increase his testosterone, or Betty to increase her estrogen, or Betty to increase her testosterone, or Joe to increase his estrogen? So we may progesterone, any hormone this is associated with, any steroid actually this is kind of associated with. So how do we influence? What is the algo? Well, it turns out that AMPK is a very important part of how you deal with and how you build hormones and steroids. So how does this work? When you're in a fed state, so up on the upper right there, you're producing cholesterol. So you're making cholesterol. You're not doing anything with it, you're just making it. So when you eat, and for 5 hours after you eat, you're making cholesterol. If you want to lower your cholesterol, fast or intermittent fast. Because when you're fasted 5 hours after a meal, you'll start tearing down that cholesterol and building other things from it. Okay, so what do you build from cholesterol? All your hormones. Every single hormone is built from cholesterol. What else do you build from cholesterol? Bile acids. So again, you need to be able to digest food. You can't do that without bile acids. So cholesterol helps you do that. But this doesn't happen unless, if we eat, let's say if I eat every 4 hours, guess what? I never break down my cholesterol. And you're going to do it in little minor ways, but you're not going to do it in a macro way. And you're going to be, deficient in certain steroids and hormones because of that. If you fast, again, over time, you'll run out of cholesterol because you run out of resources. But if you fast, you're not making any cholesterol, okay? You're breaking it down, and you're breaking it down into stuff that your body needs. So, important component here. So, obviously, this is algoable, but the influence or mechanism for change in this is us and our behavior. So this is something that we can control, right? Very much within our control, our breakdown of hormones. Now, I can't really control how my enzymes break down like cholesterol. I can't remember what the first breakdown is right off the top of my head. I think it's progesterone, and then past that, you'll go to estrogen, you'll go to testosterone. There's a bunch, of hormones that get produced. But if and what happens is cholesterol starts as the big master, and then cholesterol is broken down in several steps to, I think it's progesterone. Don't hold me to that. I can look at that. But I think progesterone, but there's several intermediary steps. But it takes enzymes to be able to do those cleaves and break down cholesterol into its basically intermediaries, okay? So you have to have enzyme action. So there are enzymes involved in this as well. But again, it's all logical, it's all explainable, it's all predictable, and it's all algoable, which is cool. All right, so what about your immune system? It'd be pretty cool to be able to algo our immune system, to understand, if I sort of influence it in certain ways, then what's going to happen? If I give it certain things, what's going to happen? And it turns out it's pretty algoable too. There's different aspects to it, so it gets a little bit more. In fact, it's probably the most complicated system to algo because there's so many different iterations of it. So your immune system can become very, very robust and let's say build a bunch of different expressions of itself. And so that makes it a little bit hard to algo. But again, it's all explainable, it's all logical, and it works in a predictive fashion. So the interesting thing about the immune system, though, at the sort of top knot level, in a fed state, so when we eat and kind of for 5 hours after we eat, and it's variable, that's why I say kind of, but it's, 4 to 5 hours, it's at least 4 hours, it's almost more than 5 hours usually. But when we eat, we're going to stay in that state, that fed state. And when we're in that fed state, we're very low energy. We have low energy. And that's contrary to what we've been taught. We've been taught that we need to eat to get energy. No, it doesn't work that way because of this AMPK switch, okay? So when we eat, we go into a real low energy state. It's, 25 to 50 times less energetic. And again, why? It's because of mitochondria are burning glucose rather than fats. But anyway, our immune system kind of goes to sleep. So we still have an immune system, but it's not as robust as it is when we're in a fasted state. So we are in a fasted state 5 hours after you eat, provided you haven't eaten again. 5 hours after you eat, we go into a fasted state. And in a fasted state, our immune system becomes quite robust and quite active. So look at all this stuff that gets turned on. Autophagy is a Pac-Man-like process where cells will gobble up other cells. If you have cancer, you want this on because this is part of your body's response to cancer. And again, if you're always in a fed state, it's off, okay? Anti-inflammatory effects are turned on. T-cell influence is turned on. Dendrites are turned on. It's kind of the control of dendrites are turned on. The regulation of macrophage polarization is turned on. And that's very important because one of the things that pathogens want to do is stick you in a macrophage polarized state. And what does this mean? Innate immunity versus adaptive immunity. So some pathogens go one way, some pathogens will want to go the other. But again, they want to stick you in a state. So you want your immune system to be able to respond as it wants to different polarizations, and you want it to be able to flip polarizations when it needs to. So that's a very important part of how you defend yourself. And then also the modulation of neutrophils. So, as you start getting ready to kill something, you need to be able to modulate those in certain ways. And you need to be able to recognize what's you and what's not you because you don't want to kill yourself. So it's pretty important how your body does that. But again, this stuff is not necessarily off when you're fed, but it's sleepy. You're a sitting duck for pathogens when you're in a fed state. Let's kind of put it that way. You're way weaker. You don't have as much juice. All right, so what about the endocannabinoid system? Well, this is really cool. And to me, this is sort of the, again, when you're building an algorithm and you're looking for an algorithm, you're always looking for that, kind of top of the decision tree. You're looking for the, place to start. And that's important. You can't really build an algo or build a decision tree without the top of the tree. So what is the top of the tree? Well, again, it takes a little bit of explanation to walk you through this, but let's just say we work kind of like a car, okay? And so you can think of, and it's not quite this simple and easy, but you can think of your hypothalamus hippocampus as the computer in our vehicle. And then you can kind of think of the endocannabinoid system as our electrical system and our sensor system that's always looking at everything in our body. It's always looking at, status of organs, status of a cell, status of communication between cells. So it's always sensing and always looking. And then the endocannabinoid system, in like our car, will use an electrical system to make changes. So if a valve needs to be adjusted or, your exhaust needs to be changed or, whatever happens inside your car, well, that's always done by the computer through the kind of the electrical system through that particular system and into that system. Well, again, that happens in you, hypothalamus hippocampus, through the endocannabinoid system, into an organ system, into a cellular communication system, even into mitochondria, okay? So that's the endocannabinoid system. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about that in a lot more detail, and I have. So if there's a lot of chip talks out there that go into more detail about the endocannabinoid system, if you're interested. But I want to walk you through this because this is very important as to the algorithm of human function, okay? Because this is top level to me. So, it turns out we're a big fat machine. We run on fat. And again, not McDonald's French fries fat, very specific types of fats. Saturated fat, which we mainly get from animals. We get some saturated fats from plants as well, like nuts. Monounsaturated fat, which we mainly do get from seeds and nuts. It's in olive oil, so oleic acid is basically monounsaturated fat. And then omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. And, it's important, these fatty acids that we eat, because guess what happens? As we eat these fatty acids, and it's these in particular, those four, as they hit our intestinal lumen when we first eat them, they immediately build endocannabinoids, okay? So in each fat, in fact, every fat that you can stick on a triglyceride, it isn't that interesting and algoable and logical, but every fat that you can stick on a triglyceride will build an endocannabinoid. By virtue of those endocannabinoids being built, you communicate that through your vagal afferent nerve to the hypothalamus hippocampus. The hypothalamus hippocampus then makes a decision as to your nutritional deficiencies or sufficiencies. So are you getting the fats that you need? Because we're just a big fat machine. And if you're not, let's say you're deficient in omega-3 fatty acids. Well, again, one of the big aspects of omega-3 fatty acids is you will build anti-inflammatory immune mediators from omega-3 fatty acids. So immediately, if you're not eating omega-3s, your hypothalamus hippocampus is going to understand a deficit and is going to help in your gut biome allow bacteria to produce useful anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids that can be used in place of the breakdowns of the omega-3 that you don't have. Otherwise, you won't have an immune system. So this is really cool how this works. It's very explainable. It's very logical. It's uber logical. But basically how this works is by the types of dietary fats that we put in ourselves, we program our body and we set a nutritional state. And again, if we're not eating certain kind of fats, we're going to have a different biome than if we are eating those kinds of fats. If we're deficient in two types of fats in particular, monounsaturated fat and omega-3 fats, those are anti-inflammatory fats. And so if we're only eating those are anti-inflammatory types of fats. If we're only eating inflammatory types of fats, we're going to have a whopping gut biome to build all our anti-inflammatories in. So this is very important, but this is a programming that we do to our human body. This is how we set sort of a state. And then from this state, things happen in our immune system, things happen in our digestive area, things happen in, how we're breaking down and building hormones and steroids. Things happen in our serotonin system based on this status. But this is the top of the tree, and you gotta have the top of the tree in order to algo you. All right, so how would we use this information to affect change? So let's say we have got this figured out. We've taken a lot of time. We built the decision trees, and now we understand that, let's say, based on certain inputs, certain measurements of you, we can make a determination for what's going on with you. And it's probably going to be, I won't say it will be a better determination that you get in the medical system now, but it will be a consistent one, okay? And it will always learn, and it will continue to get better, which is really, really cool. So again, when we first roll out stuff like this, we might miss the mark. So we might get, a couple of misdiagnoses every once in a while. But those misdiagnoses just get fed back into the model. And again, the model gets smarter, the model learns, the model gets more data, the model learns, the model learns, the model learns, which is really, really, really cool. So let's look at a specific situation. So let's assume that we've got our evaluation model done. And now let's look at a model of influence, because again, all this really doesn't matter unless we've got a way to influence all this stuff, right? So let's say we get back from our evaluation method, we've got our client that suffers from intense nausea. We don't know why this is going on. Again, in a perfect world, we do. We've assessed that this client probably has hookworm. That hookworm is causing a serotonin oversupply in that person's gut. That serotonin oversupply is basically hitting 5-HT3 receptor, and that's what's causing that person to become nauseous. Because if I hit 5-HT3 with something that's going to positively impact it, you will get nauseous, and if I hit it strong enough, you're going to throw up and you're going to vomit. But you're going to feel like you're going to vomit even if I hit it, okay? So pharmacologically, we know that the serotonin system, and in particular the 5-HT3 receptor, is our target for the very reasons I just stated. We want for our algorithm to suggest 3 options for our client. We want a pharmaceutical option, because some people will want pharmaceutical options. You know, if you're paying for this with insurance, then you're going to want to know what insurance will pay for. And sadly, right now, that's only the pharma option with some nuance. We might want a natural products option. So that's me. I want to go through God's system, this beautiful system that God has built us for our health. And I want to look at my options out here in nature. I want to see what my natural solutions are. Or you might want a cannabis option. So a lot of people are not kind of to the place of God built us this great natural system out here, and there's lots of plants that will help us. A lot of people are kind of seeing that, but just through the lens of cannabis, which is fine because cannabis can do a whole lot of stuff. So we could also produce a cannabis option. Okay, so let's consider this. And if we look at pharma, so there's some well-known HT3 blockers or antagonists. And so you can see the names of those guys there. I won't even begin to try to pronounce them. On the natural product side, we know that there's 5-HT3 antagonists or partial blockers that do this very naturally and really don't impact too much other systems. With the pharma drugs, we don't, we want to, if for our particular client, it's their gut. We don't want to impact their brain really, or not in any negative way, certainly. And again, with the pharma drugs, we're not sure because those are very specific drugs to that receptor. With natural products, we know that we can tolerate these anyway. So you can eat ginger no matter what, or turmeric or peppermint. Those are very nice, kind, benign things to you. But it turns out that they have very specific action at this neuroreceptor, at the serotonin 5-HT3 neuroreceptor, and they will block it. Okay, so they would provide relief to our client. And then the last area is cannabis. So let's say our client is insistent that they must use cannabis for this issue. Well, it turns out that THC in particular blocks the 5-HT3 neuroreceptor. Okay? So now we've looked at, problem, reaction, solution, okay? So we have, through our algorithms and through these, anticipated algorithms that we're going to build, but that we could build right now, we have assessed that this patient, has a 5-HT3 neuroreceptor problem, probably because they have some pathogen, and that pathogen is causing an overabundance of serotonin in their system. Now, in that particular case, we would also be recommending that person take something for that pathogenic situation so that we could, treat the cause, okay? But if let's say we weren't treating the cause, we were just going after that very specific 5-HT3 receptor, this would be the way that we'd do it. So for this particular person, again, we would probably recommend something, like a ivermectin or fenbendazole, depending on the type of parasite, the gut parasite. And then we would also recommend, depending on them, either a pharma product, a natural product, or a cannabis type product, depending on their needs and what they want. In a perfect world, we'd manage them through this, and then we'd look at maintenance of what they do so they never get in the same situation again, okay? But this is all easy. It's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work, but let's say logically it can be done because now we have decision trees. Now we have sort of top function. We can look at the human function under top function. and we can begin to break them down and assess them as to what they do under certain, let's say, decisions that are made from that top function. So we've got a method of understanding, and again, it's helpful to understand our master regulatory system when you're looking at human function. If you try to algo human function without an understanding of the endocannabinoid system, good luck, because you're not going to get there. It's almost our understanding of human function right now, or what, let's say, most up to the PhD levels are taught, is it's kind of chaotic and confusing. You don't get a lot of logical constructs there. But if you have the endocannabinoid system as your logical construct, it really helps you understand kind of what's going on. And again, by virtue of that, you can algo it, which is cool. You also need a method of understanding, which must lead to a system of monitoring and influence. Okay, so we need let's say, a logical frame of reference to put this in. To me, a car is a good logical frame of reference to be able to understand kind of how you work and explain how you work, and it's a good way to kind of do it. And it turns out we work a lot like that. So we have to have a system of reference, and then a kind of a way to monitor all that. And then our system needs to feed back on itself so it can learn from mistakes. So as we're building this AI system, we have to build it where it understands where it made a mistake and what mistake it made, and then teach it how basically where it erred. And so that will need to be part of building this system of the future, let's say. So where is this all headed? Well, it's headed to a pretty cool place, I think. So it's really headed to a place of med beds. So wouldn't it be cool if we could just get in and lie down on a bed, and that bed would scan us and assess us? And you think, oh, Chip, we can't do that right now. Look into some technology called bioresonance, and I have done some chip talks on bioresonance. So I'd suggest that you look at that technology. Bioresonance technology is awesome, 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 and is a way in frequency that your health can be assessed. I can, through bioresonance, you can look at the health of a liver, you can look at the frequency of a liver, basically, and see if that liver's off or on that frequency, that healthy frequency. And healthy has been determined, through the methods. So there's absolutely a method of diagnosing you. And then past that, we would need to algo that diagnosis and then look at a system and method of influence to be able to help you, right? And so I'm pretty sure we can do that through pharma, through natural products, and through cannabis if we wanted to. So the medbed could eventually probably treat you in frequency, and that's probably where all this is headed, but it certainly could recommend you, actionable items when you left that situation. So isn't that cool? Isn't that cool stuff? So we're on the verge of this. We're right on the verge of this. And again, if anyone out there is frisky and wants to help, I can move the needle pretty far here. Again, I'm not a Python programmer, but I have the algo, and the algorithm is the kind of the most important thing here. So we'll leave it there for now. Next week, or within the next couple of weeks, we're kind of not doing them as consistent as we was, but we are still doing chip talks. So we'll be out with another exciting chip talk soon. We'll continue to try to help you and me understand how we work better. And that's really the task here, empowering you with knowledge of how you work so that we can better defend ourselves against the man, so to speak. Anyway, see you guys later. Have a good week. Bye.